Hi there. Welcome to episode 2 of Ask the Fascia Masters Questions, where we answer the questions that people have left on our YouTube videos. So if you have any questions that come up, feel free to leave them in the comments below and we'll get to them soon. Someone asked the question, if you have a severe injury, even a crush injury, can you reverse the damage even after 20 years? And I absolutely love this question because ultimately, no matter where we're starting from, when we start to understand how to address fascia, how to increase our understanding of conscious diaphragmatic breathing, as well as melt through adhesions and scar tissue, we're always going to move in a better direction than when we're starting. So whether we can get to a scenario where we're like we were before that injury, maybe not likely, but we can definitely create improvement along the way. In fact, there's an amazing video that we're going to link below sharing one of our members, Elisa Songer-Burke, where she had a crazy injury. She basically drove her sled into an ice wall and broke multiple parts of her body. And the results of her time using block therapy and having guidance was phenomenal. So you definitely want to watch that video because it's very empowering, inspiring, and I think it's going to give you a lot of answers. Laura asked the question, if after a severe injury of applying heat, even after 2 or 3 days, if it's still really inflamed, at that point, should ice be applied? Here's the thing, whenever we have a really severe injury, the body is sending inflammation to rebuild the tissue, and it will send it for as long as it takes for that tissue to be rebuilt. The thing is though, it's not about just applying heat. We really want to understand the concepts of fascia decompression so that we can address these injuries properly. And most importantly, we want to integrate proper diaphragmatic breathing because that's the engine in the body that's going to help to drive the fluids properly, as well as fascia decompression so that we can melt through adhesions that are blocking blood and oxygen flow to the site of injury. If this is your situation, I highly recommend that you dive into our sampler program. It's only $9. You use a rolled up towel. That in itself is going to give you such a wonderful understanding of how to address your fascia, especially if you're dealing with any kind of injury. Another person asked if it's safe to do our fascia decompression techniques when they have a bulging or herniated disc. And absolutely it is. What I would recommend is going to our private Facebook group, Block Therapy Community. You can ask that question and you're going to see the answers from people that have that condition, that have come through it using this work. What's most important, though, is to also understand where the cause sites are. And the cause sites, at least one of the major ones for any issues in the low back, will be the feet and the calves, even between the toes. I'm going to link a video below here showing you the work between the toes, where we decompress for 3 minutes between every single toe. This helps to repattern our feet, how we walk, and that creates changes all the way up the chain. It's always important to understand what's creating the issues, and addressing the cause sites is really important, which is part of this program. Annika asked a great question because she does a lot of work, yoga, Pilates, and a whole bunch of other things. And she doesn't really have any pains in her body, but she is aware that she has tension in her traps affecting her neck as well. One of the things when we're looking at the body as a whole is that we need to look at the anchors, and the hands and the feet are major anchors for what's going on in the core. For example, in the core, if we don't have a strong diaphragmatic breath, we literally start collapsing inward, and this is creating a rolling forward of the shoulders, causing the traps to be tight and tense. Also, the alignment of the hands and the arms play a role here. Anatomical position is palms facing forward. Yet if you look at most people, their palms are facing behind. So even just sitting here, turn your palms forward, turn them back, and just notice how that affects the rib cage. So when we're looking at fascia decompression, we have to address the whole body. I'm going to put a link here below showing you how to decompress between the fingers as well as the toes. These are the main cause sites for what's going on in the core and the rib cage. So to even just start addressing this is going to make a difference overall. But she also asked, how long does it take every day to do fascia decompression work? And that's a great question. And ultimately, you can just literally spend 5 minutes a day with your breath. But if you can commit 15 to 30 minutes a day, you're going to see some pretty remarkable changes. And our sampler program, which we can link to below here as well, will give you a really good understanding of fascia decompression just simply using a rolled up towel. Mary asked a question, where to start with fascia decompression? She's 70 years old and is in pretty good health. So that's a great question. And ultimately, really great to start with our sampler program because, again, it's $9 and you use a rolled up towel and there's 9 classes. And it really gives you a deep and full understanding of what fascia decompression is all about. From there, if you feel you want to move forward, you can certainly dive into our starter program. But even before that, I'm going to link below a video showing proper diaphragmatic breathing and how to access this, because that in itself is going to make a difference for your health. We actually can feed the body up to 6 times the oxygen when breathing diaphragmatically. And also, it has been shown that 84% of weight loss comes through proper exhalation. So that in itself is a really amazing reason why we just want to understand diaphragmatic breathing. So the video will be linked below, and I hope you enjoy. Another person asked about rejuvenating her face. Although not an esthetician, she wants to understand what we can do to create the best opportunity for aging gracefully. This is a great question. What I'm going to do in the link below, I'm going to share our 30-day upper body challenge winner. This was amazing. The changes in not only the skin, but the entire shape of the skull were kind of mind-blowing. I was so very excited to see this because this is really what it's about. It's not just about lifting the skin or making the skin look more plump. It's really about restructuring your cellular alignment so that we can properly feed all cells proper amounts of oxygen, as well as detoxify efficiently. And that's what this work is really all about. It's about ensuring that flow is correct in the body. And as long as there's flow, there's aging gracefully. Another person asked about abdominal scarring from multiple surgeries and if doing the towel position will eventually get rid of the pain. That's a great question. And especially when you've had lots of surgeries, there's a lot going on in here. Below, I'm going to add a link where I'm showing you how to use the towel while you're lying on your sides, right in this area. This is an important area to also address when we're dealing with abdominal scars, because ultimately what's happening is the body is getting pulled forward with such force and intensity that just working in the belly won't be enough. What we want to do is also release a lot of the pressure in the rib cage so that we can lift that rib cage up and back. There's so much more we can do in general, but adding that one position in on both sides will also be a benefit because, again, to lighten the pressure from what's happening in that abdominal area will also help to decrease the amount of pain, as well as you'll get to those deeper adhesions at a much more efficient pace. Teresa asks if I could clarify about supporting inflammation, which I reference a lot. What we need to understand is inflammation is basically the body directing blood, oxygen, nutrient flow to areas of need. The real problems in the body are the adhesions and the scar tissue. That's what's forcing the body to create that need for inflaming. So when we support inflammation, then we're allowing the body to rebuild tissue instead of creating more scar tissue and more adhesion. I'm going to give you an analogy. If you were baking a cake, you would put eggs, flour, oil, sugar, etc., mix it up and you have batter. If you put that batter in the freezer, you have frozen batter. If you put that batter in the oven, you bake cake. By supporting inflammation, I mean putting heat, putting energy, putting life into the body as opposed to freezing it. Because if we freeze it, then we're actually creating more scar tissue and more adhesion. And the more of that we have in the body, the denser we are, the colder we are, and the less flow that we have, which means gravity is going to take us and manipulate us where we can, in fact, be far more in control of how the body ages through understanding fascia decompression. Carrie asked if this work would help her friend who's 18 who suffered from a horrific accident. And I want to say absolutely yes, it will help, because when you turn on the body's innate ability to heal, it's quite phenomenal what can happen. There's a video already linked showing Lisa Songer-Burke and her response after a very traumatic accident. And she was in her 60s when this happened. When we start turning on proper diaphragmatic breathing, we move out the debris, the damage, the negative emotion, all of the stuff that gets stuck and stored in the tissue, and we replace it with blood filled with oxygen, which brings life, which brings healing. Whenever we're dealing with such a serious thing, though, it's always best to reach out to us so that we can connect you to the proper people to make sure that the healing protocols are done safely and with guidance as well. A user asks, how do we know if fascia opens if there's no release of emotion coming through? That's a really awesome and interesting question, because absolutely emotions get trapped in the fascia. But it doesn't mean that you're not creating change just because you're not having an emotional release. Sometimes the emotion is trapped deeply in the layers, and it can take time to get to those moments in time when there was an emotion, a trauma that got trapped in the body. Ultimately, what happens with trauma or pain or anything like that is we reactively hold the breath. We go into this protected freeze mode. If we don't release that, like a deer who survives an attack that shakes, we store it deeply inside, and then we go through time accumulating more and more and more layering of adhesions in the body. So sometimes it can take time. The key is we really want to make sure that we're training the breath properly, because when we can learn how to control the breath, slow down that full exhale, then we start moving out the negative emotion as well as the toxins and the waste from the body, and then we can replace that with oxygen-rich blood. Sometimes these emotional releases take time to show themselves, and sometimes they can happen immediately. We're all different with the healing crisis, but thank you for asking that question. And you can certainly reach out to our Facebook community, because they will also be able to offer a lot of information around that. Joanna asks a great question: if I know about what year the world finally awakened to fascia. I went to the world's first fascia conference in 2007. And at that time, they were sharing that we only understand about 4% of this tissue. It was a combination of the medical community, yogis, and body workers that came together for this conference that was held at Harvard, which was really fun to join. Having said that, myofascial release, rolfing are also fascia techniques, and they were positioned decades before this. Even though the world only awakened in 2007, there's been an awareness of fascia. It just wasn't as mainstream as it is today. The Webb family asked, where can I learn to work on my fascia bands because I have a ballooning belly? Great question. And again, this is where we really need to understand the cause sites in the body. Your limbs are basically the puppet masters of the core. So if your feet aren't properly aligned and you have one foot splaying, one foot anchoring, which is typical for pretty much everybody, as well as arms that internally rotate, this is creating a lot of confusion in the core and the rib cage. Essentially, also, if we're not breathing diaphragmatically as well, now we have a very weak platform for all of everything above. The weight of the rib cage, head, and arms comes crashing down into the core space. So when we have a ballooning belly, we have to look at what the feet are doing, because if your feet are out of alignment, that's creating tension in the pelvis. That in turn is going to also draw that rib cage forward and down, creating basically a storm of tension in the abdomen. There's no one area to work on this. We really need to understand the full body. But in the link below, I've shared that video where we teach you how to decrease the tension between the fingers and the toes. This will be a great place to start, because they are the most frozen areas of the body and create the most manipulation. So even doing that alone is going to create energy through the legs and the arms. It's going to help to create some lightness. But when you can also dive into the fascia decompression, the sampler program, that's going to give you far more information that you can start with to see the results. Allison asked if I could talk a little bit about rashes and eczema. Whenever there's stress, there's a breakout. So this is really an understanding of the lymphatic flow in the body and liver health. The liver is the organ that filters the toxins from the body. So if it's clogged, then the toxins are going to be coming through the skin. And the thing is, if we're not breathing diaphragmatically, which most people aren't, the liver gets cold. Fatty liver disease is really common. Think of butter at room temperature. It's a solid. When we heat it, it becomes a liquid. That's what we want for the body. We want the body to be a certain temperature so that we can move the waste from the body effectively and then feed the body properly with oxygen and proper nutrients. The whole work of the body is really necessary for this, because again, if we want to create a stronger breath, we also have to understand how the limbs impact what's going on in the core of the body. So the program in general will help with this. And it may take a little bit of time. And sometimes when we start this work, things look worse before they look better, because we're moving the stuff out of the body so that we can get to the root of the issue. If you want to dive into our Facebook community, I know there's been many people that have had these issues that have also used this process, and you can hear from them as well. Kat asked what I think about Pilates. And first of all, I just want to say I think it's a wonderful way to lengthen and strengthen your body. And when you add blocking in combination to that, it absolutely will take you to another level. Blocking allows you to release the adhesions that are gripping on the bone so that you can actually increase the length of the muscle that you're working with. The goal is that we are the tallest version of ourselves. We want every cell to be in its perfect space, because if the cells are aligned, there's ease of flow of nutrients in, as well as waste removal. Combining these modalities, as well as yoga and Pilates would be my two favorites in conjunction with block therapy to give you the most benefit. Julie asked if we should block every day. And this is really an individual question, because whatever we're doing, we have to deal with the consequences of our action. So for some people, blocking daily in the beginning is absolutely fine. For other people, depending on your body and what's going on, it may be too much. And that's why it's really important to use your breath as your guide. When you do that, you're approaching your body in a way that is safe. And you're also training yourself to understand when your body is saying this is too much. And if you do feel you've overdone it, take that rest day, do a little bit of rest and rejuvenation, perhaps a hot Epsom salt tub, allowing your body to move those toxins most effectively that get pulled up. Again, it's wonderful for some people to do it daily, but it is a process of having to navigate this for yourself. I would highly recommend joining our private Facebook community, because in there you will have responses from people as well as continued guidance along the way.